morning called Kingdom Builders that I'm going to get to in a minute. But before that, most of you will have got a text message through the week, if we have your number anyways, that said there's a really big announcement. I did send out an email several weeks ago that said there was going to be a really big announcement, and then I had to get the person doing announcements that day to say, no, there's not going to be a big announcement. So I'm not lying to you this time. There actually is going to be a big announcement. And last time I said this, said to everyone, hey, there's going to be a really big announcement, something really exciting. Narelle came up to me and she said, are you leaving? No, she was devastated. She thought that was what was happening. She was devastated, I think. Anyway, so that's not the big announcement. We're not leaving. But as most of you will be aware, a few months ago, we said that we were finishing up our Christmas Spectacular. As far as, for those of you that don't know what the Christmas Spec is, it was this event that we've ran for the past 11 odd years where we've just got together with the community and celebrated Christmas. It's been, from our opinion, a phenomenal event. It's attracted somewhere around 4,000 people for the last 5 years, give or take 500 people. It's very hard to count massive clumps of people, very, very hard, but somewhere around that. And so we said that we had to finish that due to a whole host of reasons that I talked about several months ago now. If you want to know those reasons, come and I'll download them to you. But one of the things that I said, that this wasn't going to be it for what we're doing with the community. We're not shutting that down and then not doing anything. The idea is that we felt to finish that, but we also felt that God was asking us to do something else. God was asking us to step into something else. So this week, I sent an email out to the leadership team, and it was a blog along the lines of talking about the Great Commission. And the Great Commission, for you, if you don't know what it is, it's this verse that's found in Matthew 28. This is one of the last dialogues Jesus has with his disciples. Before this is after the crucifixion, after the resurrection, and he's about to be taken up to heaven. And he says, go into all the world, and I want you to do this. I want you to preach to everyone. I want you to baptize everyone. I want you to make disciples of all the nations, is the gist of what he says. But what I highlighted to the team, and God's been talking to me about this for quite some time, and specifically the last couple of weeks, as we've been getting closer and closer to this, was the start of that. Jesus said, go. So often as Christians, we have this come mentality. Come to me. Come to church and you will get looked after. Come to church and you will get healed. Come to church and you'll be loved on. Come to church and we'll disciple you. Come to church and we'll do that. And I think there's an element of church that needs to be that as far as how we set this service up. And that's part of why our vision is what it is, and that's why we run the service the way we do. But in and of that, I think we have a mission and we have a responsibility to go. And we need to be really deliberate in our going. So as you came in, this is the big announcement. Most of you, I hope anyways, grabbed this, and you've potentially, as you were engaging in incredible worship and listening to all of Adam, you weren't reading this, were you? No. But for those of you that have flicked through it, which I actually hope that you did, that you've flicked through it, so you've got kind of an idea of what I'm talking about and sharing, and all of that is what we're doing is we're launching this thing called Volunteer Day. It's on October 19, and the whole premise of this is about us going to love people, to connect with people, to embrace people, to serve people, to volunteer our services for individuals, for people. One of the things that you'll notice in this going is when Jesus went, he started going to people. He started going to people and meeting their physical needs. He met them right where they are. He looked after them. He loved them. For some of them, it looked like healing them. For others, it looked like different things. Like the spiritual component to Jesus' ministry generally came after he had served a practical need. And so often, I find myself wanting to serve a spiritual need before I want to serve a physical need. And it's not because I've got to have one before I give something. It's just how I end up doing things, and it's completely anti, I think, what we're meant to be doing as Christians. So the big thing we're wanting to do, October 19, is all gather together and actively love our community. Serve our community. Just do something basic for our community. It's not necessarily this big thing where we're going to go to the park and do this, or we're going to go there and do that. It's who in your neighborhood, who in your area of influence, who do you see that needs serving, that needs loving on, that needs blessing, that needs helping, needs something. Mobilize a group and go and do it. So if you were to flick through it, and I'd encourage you to really quickly flick through it as I'm going through, the big idea, the big premise behind it is that this is surrounding our small group. So every link leader, which is our small group leaders, they are charged with the responsibility of mobilizing their group of actively going out and serving. So if you're not in a small group, here's my encouragement. To start with, jump on the website, check out the small groups, start talking to the small group leaders, ask what they're thinking about doing, that sort of thing, and then you find a small group that you can join with on Volunteer Day. Perhaps you don't like small groups, or you don't like any of the small group leaders. That was a sarcastic comment. Everyone's meant to laugh at that because you love all the small group leaders. They're really, really good. But in the case that you don't, you can mobilize your own group. And so what you would do is there'd be a group of you like, we really want to go to do this. Everything that everyone is doing, we're not interested in doing, but I've really got this on my heart to go and do, and these people that I can connect with and serve and love on. And then you find a group of people and you mobilize your own group and you go and serve that area of the community, that person in the community. And so it might look like weeding, it might look like mowing lawns or cleaning up a park. There's a whole host of things it could look like. And so you mobilize your own group. And then you get there, and some page it's got a timeline. So the reason we're launching it here is so you've got time to think, to discuss before we start the timeline. So the timeline looks like this. I'm just going to run through this quickly. It looks like week 1, which is September the 15th, that the small group leaders start talking with the people in their groups. But that would look like you, if you're not in a small group, that you want to connect and you want to do something, but you want to mobilize your own group. You'd start finding people and mobilizing your own group and asking questions. Hey, what could we do? Where's an area of need? What could we be doing? What could we be serving? How could we be loving on them? Then the next week, we'll have a list of projects to come available that we'll look for, and we're finding out that we're going to put up on the website. The book's got a heap of ideas as well. But we're going to come up with some other ones as well, and we're going to put on the website. Week 3, it's you pick the project. So we want you, and we need you to pick the project on week 3. So this is several weeks before October 19th. And then from there, you register the project, and you can do that online. All this is about to go live on the website. And then the really exciting thing is we give you a T-shirt. The week before the Volunteer Day, we give you a T-shirt at church. How exciting is that? It's going to be cool, isn't it? It's going to be a white T-shirt, and it's going to have volunteer written on it. It's going to have the website on the back. It's going to be your T-shirt, and you're going to rock that round. It's going to be fantastic. Please get excited. And then on October 19, this is what you do. You gather your group together, and wherever you're gathering together, you get together, you pray, you connect with each other, you encourage one another. You've already planned out what each other are doing and that sort of thing. And this is what I like about this. And this is the vision and the heart that I have. And I'm about to get to my message in a second. The heart that I have, and the heart that we as a leadership team have is this. There'll be people. Can I pick on council workers for a second? You know how every time you drive, there's no council workers here, are there? If you are, we love you dearly. Yeah. So you know how you drive past the job site and there's like 5 guys with a shovel and 1 digging? Yeah. I like that. No, you gotta think this through. There will be people in your group that will not work, but they will talk to the person that you're serving. And they'll love on them, and they'll connect with them, and they'll build a relationship with them in order for them to be perhaps invited to church or invited to go and have a coffee and connect with, that they can be followed up and connected with so that at some point that they can discover Jesus, they can have the love and the mercy and the grace of Jesus shared with them. So the idea behind Volunteer Day is this, that there'll be some people working their guts out, and there'll be some people that won't, because their natural gifting is talking, is connecting, is building relationships with it. The idea behind Volunteer Day is to actively serve people so we can love individual people, so that individual people can feel blessed and individual people can experience the love, the grace and mercy of Jesus. So what's happening on October 19? Volunteer Day, yeah. Who's excited about it? Yes, I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to getting out and practically serving our community. Very much looking forward to it. So I'm going to pray, because I need prayer for what I'm about to do. And then we're going to get into Kingdom Builders. So God, I thank you for this series that we're launching today, Father. I thank you for this series where we get to look at how we can partner with you, with what you're doing in the community, with what you're doing around the globe, with what you're doing around this country as well, Father. And I pray that as we look at that and we talk about that and we discuss that, Father, I pray that we can all be challenged individually. as to how we can enlarge how we're currently partnering with you and step out further into how we're partnering with you to reach people and see people embraced and people connected with you in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen. So we're launching today this thing called Kingdom Builders. If you haven't been around or this is your first week here or anything, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. I think about the last 5 weeks. There is booklets up the back if you want more details. And so Kingdom Builders is the idea, the heart behind it is this, that we believe that God's got a mission for the world. Not just here in Australia and not just here in Echuca. We believe God's got a mission here in Echuca, that God's got a mission in Australia and God's got a global mission as well. And we want to actively, as a church and as individuals, be partnering with that mission. And that mission, it looks like this. It's embracing people. It's seeing people set free. It's seeing people loved. It's seeing people connected with and all the rest. And so Adam touched on an IJM fundraiser, which is International Justice Mission. And International Justice Mission, that what they do is they actively work towards setting people free from slavery. So you've got people trapped in sex slavery. You've got people trapped in forced labor. You've got people trapped in what they thought were marriages that they were flying over to and discover that it's the opposite of that. It's slavery to make money for the husband or whatever and what have you. And we've got this idea that often that slavery doesn't exist, perhaps because it's not under or on our eyesight all the time or in front of our faces. But the reality is slavery exists very much around the world, and slavery exists here in this country too. It's happening consistently. And so, and part of Kingdom Builders is we want to look at that, how we can partner with that. And so one of the ways we're partnering with that is the IJM fundraiser coming up in a couple of weeks. So my encouragement, jump on the website. I'm plugging it again, sorry Adam. Jump on the website. There's a number that you can ring to book your table. It's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. But so that's the idea behind Kingdom Builders, how we can, as a church, as individuals, partner with God to see his mission of seeing people step into freedom, continue to move forward into the future. And this is one of those really, really taboo subjects because we're talking about money. So there's this group of people, there's a handful of people, and perhaps you're one of them, perhaps you're here this morning and you're one of them, and you're watching online, you're one of them, and you think, the church is just about money, taking money from me. They're always asking for tithes and offerings. They're always asking for something else. They're always asking for money. Yes, there's people that think that, and I have people when I'm shoeing horses for them. Again, I'm not shooting them, I'm not shooing them away, I'm putting shoes on their feet. I have people when I'm talking to them about church, like, but don't you just ask for money? No, I don't just ask for money. We don't just ask for money. So if you're that way inclined, this series is probably going to reinforce that opinion. To be frank, because we are unashamedly talking about money, asking for money, encouraging people to give through this series. But so if you are here this morning and that's how you think, or that's your opinion, or you're watching online, this is what I'm gonna make a commitment with you, and I want you to make a couple of commitments with me. The first is this: if you make a couple of commitments with me, and that looks like the first commitment is you turn up every week. And I'll make the commitment with you for this. If you turn up every week, that I will not ask you to give. I'll ask everyone else to give, but I won't be asking you to give. So if that's you're watching online, you can come. I will not ask you to give. I'll be asking everyone else to give. And I would encourage you to make a commitment to not give, unless you are compelled by your heart to give. What we don't want people giving because someone's twisting their arm or I'm twisting your arm or anything like that. We want people to give because their heart has been compelled to give. And I believe that is when Jesus steps in and Jesus starts talking and ministering to our hearts. So if that's you and you struggle with the church talking about giving, talking about money, my encouragement is commit not to giving unless your heart is compelled to give. But in that, you need to turn up every week to see what we're talking about, to hear the mission, to hear where we're going, to hear what we're doing. And so if that's you, turn up every week. Don't feel like you have to give until your heart compels you to give. Then give generously would be the idea. So something that I've noted, you've probably noted as well, is there's something ingrained in us. If you put the first slide up, Matt, is that I think we're hardwired to give. And I'm not saying we're hardwired to give our money. That's difficult. No one likes giving their money. But we are hardwired. I think giving is hardwired in us. And I say that because reflect on this for a second. When you have a really good day at work, or you get a promotion, or something really good happens to you, really, really good happens to you, what do? You normally go and share it with someone, don't you? And then on the flip side of that, if you have a really, really bad day, if everything's falling apart in life, I'd like to think anyways that you go and you find community to share it with, someone to share it with them. And the big reason we do this is because we want to give stuff away. We want to give away our joy, for one, not because we don't want it, as far as we want to. When I have a really good day, I'll come home and I share it with my wife because I want to give her the joy that I'm experiencing. And then if I'm having something really bad, I'll catch up with we at Sage, it may be Adam, it may be someone else, and I'll share what's going on because I'm wanting to get rid of this thing that's on me. And then the flip side of that is this, that we want to do it because there's something that is like ingrained, it's built within us that we want to support, we want to help, we want to encourage people. And there's this toing and froing that happens. So say someone comes to you and they've had the best time of their lives, the best week, the best whatever, it's fantastic. You want to give them more joy, generally. Like, that's fantastic. You want to enter into their celebrations with them and be excited for them and encourage them and all of that. And then on the flip side, if it all goes pear-shaped, you generally want to help them. You want to give them help. Like, I think we're hardwired to want to give stuff away. And I think we're hardwired to want to give things away because we're looking for meaning, we're looking for substance, we're looking for life. And something that I've noted about life is that life isn't discovered, life isn't found by trying to grab hold of stuff and drawing it into us. Life's discovered and found by what we can hand over to someone. That's why when we have the best day ever, we want to give it to someone because we want them to join in the celebrations with us. That's why when we have the worst time ever, we share it with someone. We're wanting to get something back in return, and that's often we want to feel better. We want help in all of that. We're hardwired to give. We're hardwired to do this, to move forward, to join in community. And so the idea of Kingdom Builders is we're wanting to look at that and then turn that into finances as far as what are we doing with our finances? Are we giving? Are we taking? Like what are we doing with it? There's this story in the Bible, or there's this guy in the Bible to start with called Paul, and what he does is he's got this idea in mind. I want to give away what's been given to me. And so like Paul has an encounter with Jesus on Damascus Road. You can read about it in Acts, and he has this encounter that such transforms him. He's like, I want to give all of this grace, all of this love away. So he runs around the countryside planting churches. And he runs around and he's planting church after church. He goes to this city, plants a church, that city plants a church, and he's constantly planting churches. And as he's doing this, he sees this need start popping up everywhere. And the big need that starts popping up is that there's people that need love, but there's people that need actively supporting and helping and caring for and connecting for and so forth. And some of it looks like this. It all comes to this point where there's a famine erupts. And there's this famine going on specifically that's happening in Jerusalem at the time of what we're about to read from one of Paul's letters. And so he ends up connecting with this church in Corinth. And he has this encouragement to them. He says, I want you to give. There's a famine going on, and we're going to get to some reasons as to why he's really encouraging them to give a little bit later on. But he talks to them like, I really want you to give, and there's reasons behind it. And one of the big things is this. He gives them this challenge. And Corinth was known for this. They were known for their wealth. They were really wealthy. They were exceedingly wealthy. And so he goes to them and he's sharing this message with everyone. It's not just Corinth. Like everyone around the region, he's encouraging, hey, I want you to give. I want you to give. I want you to give. And so what we're reading about is Paul realizing that, hey, we need to be able to give. We need to be demonstrating our faith. We need to be giving stuff away. We need to be giving what God's given to us back to people. And sometimes that looks like practical efforts, practical serving, practical love in the form of money. And so Paul starts having this conversation from 2 Corinthians 9 from verse 1. And so he's writing to these people in Corinth, and he says this. He says, I don't need to write you about the money you plan to give for God's people. As far as God's people, they're the people in Jerusalem. That's who he's talking about. He's raising money to give to the people belonging to God in Jerusalem. I know, he says, and so he's talking to Corinth, I know how eager you are to give. And I have proudly told the Lord's followers in Macedonia that you people in that place that I can't pronounce have been ready for a whole year. Now your desire to give has made them want to give. You've got to think through this in the context of Corinth. You can drop that slide for a second. They're really, really wealthy in comparison to everywhere else around. And then if you to jump forward like a couple of thousand years, the wealthy people today don't have a huge problem with giving. We may disagree with it, but we all know Bill Gates gives an incredible amount, or Oprah Winfrey gives an incredible amount. We can think of all these very, very wealthy people that give to charity. Giving to charity is like something that isn't necessarily shunned against, or it's something that the majority of people do. But if you go back into this time, that was the opposite. You did not give. If you were wealthy, you would not give to the people that were below you that are struggling, for this simple reason that they were second-class, not citizens. They were second-class human beings. So Paul's asking the Christians in Corinth, he says, I understand that you are wealthy. I understand all of this. I'm encouraging you to give. And so this is a big thing for all the churches that are, all the churches from the cities that are around. They're looking at this and they're like, wow, these people that look at all of us, they look at everyone else around us as second-class human beings. These people are actively raising their giving money. God must be doing something in their hearts, because it was so countercultural for them to pull money out of their pockets and actively give it. And so Paul's highlighting it's making everyone else want to give, because they're coming to this realization Jesus is actively doing something in their hearts. So that's what's happening here, and it continues on. He says, that's why I'm sending Titus and the two others to you. I want you to be ready, just as I promised. So he's promised people that these people are giving. He's promised people that they're going to give to this need, to these things. I've promised that. I want you to be ready. This will prove that we were not wrong to brag about you. He continues, verse 4. Some of the followers from Macedonia may come with me, and I don't want them to find that. I want them to find that you have the money ready. If you don't, I would be embarrassed for trusting you to do this, but you would be embarrassed even more. And so he starts this whole conversation with, hey, I think it's really good that you are giving. I know you've been preparing, and I've been boasting about it, and I've been bragging about it. And this is fantastic, and it's encouraging other people to give. And so this is something that's been happening for about 12 months. They've been preparing this giving. And it's coming to the time where he's going to turn up and collect it, and he's saying, I want to make sure that you are doing this. This is going against your culture. This is going against your upbringing. This is going against everything. I want to make sure that you're doing it. And so he's sending people ahead. He's saying, I think it'd be really good just to have that reminder to go ahead of me to make sure that you are doing it. That's why we've been talking about Kingdom Builders for the last about 5-6 weeks. For the simple reason that we want that reminder consistently in our minds. Hey, we've got giving coming up. We got people that we want to love. We want people that we want to serve coming up. We need to be ready to give. That's what he's doing. Paul continues on. He said, so I have decided to ask. Yes, we are here, sorry. Titus is at the start of the last one. I was a confused little boy. So I've decided to ask Titus and the others to spend some time with you before I arrive. This way, they can arrange to collect the money that you have promised. Then you will have the chance to give, not to give because you want to and not because you feel forced to. So he's saying, being prepared, knowing this is coming, it'll remove all that feeling of you are being forced to, and you get to prepare your heart so you want to give. And then he gets to here. He says this, and I love this. He says, remember this saying, a few seeds make a small harvest, but a lot of seeds make a large harvest. And he starts changing the dialogue and talking to them now like farmers. I don't know if these people from Corinth were farmers or not, but he starts talking to them about this farmer analogy. If you're more used to some traditional Bible translations, it says, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. And what he's highlighting to them is this: if a farmer's got a plot of land that he's going to sow, he doesn't just throw seed out, not thinking about what he's going to bring in. And you could bring that forward to today, and you could go back then, and the principle will remain the same. What a farmer is intending to harvest, he'll sow accordingly to that. So if he's wanting a monstrous crop, he makes sure he sows seed that will give him the chance of harvesting that monstrous crop. But if he doesn't, he won't. And so what he's trying to remind them of is this: hey, there is a big harvest that we want to meet, that we want to reach, that we want to work towards, that we want to give towards. What kind of, and so he's challenging their thoughts. What kind of giving are you raising? Are you projecting? Are you handing forward? What are you preparing? What are you putting aside? What are you doing? And he's giving them this analogy because he's wanting to bring it to their minds that if you just give a tiny bit, don't expect a big harvest. If you just give a tiny amount, if you just throw a small seeds out there, don't expect tons after tons after tons to come back, because your harvest will always be determined by how much you sow. So he's challenging them with this, and likewise when it comes to kingdom builders, and I unashamedly am challenging us with the same thing. How much of a harvest are we expecting to see in our community? How much of a harvest are we expecting to see with IJM missions? How much of a harvest are we expecting to see with Mission Australia, which we're going to talk about in a second as well, with what they're doing with domestic violence and homelessness? How much of a harvest are we expecting to see? And the big question that I'd ask all of us to ponder is, what is it that we're giving? And does our giving reflect the harvest that we're believing that God is bringing? I'm specifically probably not talking if you're new to church or anything. You're probably off the hook at the second, but specifically to us as Christians, and Paul's going to challenge us a whole lot more in a second. This is something that we need to be prayerfully considering and thinking about, and all of this. What does our giving reflect of the seed that we're sowing in the belief that we're going to be harvesting? I love how Paul sends people ahead to say, hey, I want you to prepare. I want you to be preparing for quite some time. One of the things that you'll see next week, be on your seats, is that we understand that giving a whole heap at once is difficult. So one of the things for next week when we get to it is there's the option, as we're giving towards what we're doing here in this community, there's the option that you'll see on those things to give a consistent sum, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly for the next 12 months. And so if I'm to be transparent, what Sage and I are doing, we're choosing to give a lump sum to every single one of them. So we're giving a lump sum next week because we believe in what Epicentre is doing here in the community. We're giving a lump sum to what IJM is doing, so we believe in IJM. And we're giving a lump sum to what Mission Australia is doing, so we believe in what they're doing. But on top of that, we're making a consistent commitment of what we're going to be giving to this place, because we believe what Epicentre is doing here. And we want to be, like Sage and I'm talking for Sage and myself, I can't talk for you. But Sage and I want to be leading in, I want to see a big harvest, so I want to give as much as I can. Paul continues on after he has all that. He says, each of you must make up your own mind about how much to give. So what he's saying to is, I understand that everyone's giving is going to be different, determining their income levels. So you need to think through this, pray through this. You need to decide, how much can I give? Is that going to absolutely bankrupt me? Is that not enough? Is that what? Do I need to stretch myself? So each of you must make up in your own mind about how much to give. And then I love what he says here. It doesn't make any sense. He says, but don't feel sorry that you must give, and don't feel that you are forced to give. Anyone notice that? Don't feel sorry that you must give, and don't feel that you are forced to give. You notice how it doesn't work? Like one cancels the other out. Don't feel sorry that you must give. Or no, don't feel forced to give, but you must give. Don't feel forced to give, but you must give. Specifically, when you say it in that order, it doesn't make any sense at all. Don't feel forced to give, but hang on, you must give. He's throwing them out a challenge. What he's saying is, I don't want you to feel forced to give, but if your Christianity, if your faith, if Jesus moving inside you is real, then Jesus will be compelling you to give. So it's not a matter of whether you give, you will give. It's just a matter of how much are you going to give. So don't feel sorry that you must give, but don't feel forced to give. Don't feel forced by me to give, but rather allow Jesus to compel you to give, is what he's saying. Then he goes on and says, No, come back. Easy killer. God loves people who love to give. As far as this is what God loves to do. God loves to give, and God equally loves people who love to give. God can bless you with everything that you need, and you will always have more than enough to do all kinds of things, all kinds of good things for others, for people around you. And then he continues on and he says this. He says, the scriptures say this. So now he's quoting scripture again. He says, God freely gives his gifts to the poor and always does right. And he's alluding to this thought. How does one demonstrate their love? They give something. And he highlights, and he's highlighting this. He says, you know what? God loved you, Corinth, so much that he gave his son. And likewise, if Paul was standing in front of us this morning, he'd be saying the same thing to us. God loved you so much that he gave you his son. He gave something to you. He gave you a gift that gave you eternal life, that gave you freedom, that gave you love, that gave you grace, that gave you mercy. God loves you so much that he chose to give. So that's how God expresses, God reveals that he loves by his giving. Likewise, the big challenge that he's throwing out to them and Paul's throwing out to us as well is, does your love or is your love revealed? It's the only way we can reveal it is by our giving. And there's multiple ways you can give, of course. It's not finances that reveals your giving, but this is the big challenge that he's making to us. Paul continues on and says, God gives seed to the farmers and provides everyone with food. He will increase what you have so that you can give even more to those in need. And so what Paul's highlighting is, you know what? God's going to bless you. God's going to look after you. God's going to provide for you. God's going to put food on your table. God's going to look after you. And he's going to provide you enough that you can give, that you can sow, that you can see people move forward. And then he says, you'll be blessed in every way. And you'll be able to keep on being generous. I love that he includes blessing with generosity. You're not blessed so that you can just feather your own nest. You're blessed so that you can be generous. You're blessed so that you can give back. You're blessed so that you can do something for other people. Where are we? Yeah. Then many people, he says this, will thank God when we deliver the gift. Again, this is back to Paul challenging them with this thought. There's a need. There's a need in Jerusalem, and the need is this. There's a famine. We want you to give towards that. And we want your faith to be realized and understood by the people around them. So we want you to give. We're going to explain that in a minute when we get to the next verse. It says this, and this is what I love what happens when we give. Regardless of whether it's 2,000 years ago in Corinth, giving to Jerusalem, or we're giving today to Echuca Moama, or IJM, or Mission Australia. This is what happens when we give. What you're doing, he says, is much more than a service that supplies God's people with what they need. It is something that will make many others thank God. It is something that will make many others thank God. The backstory to this, like I said at the start, there's this famine going on in Jerusalem, but there's another backstory to that. You can drop that slide. That opens it up a whole lot more. So you got to understand that Christendom is really, really, really young right here. While Paul's writing this, it's young. Christendom is young. God is not young. So to clarify that, God has been around since the beginning of time. He's been moving in the lives of individuals since the beginning of time. But Jesus, God's Son, turning up on the earth, on planet Earth in human form, and then developing followers that are following him in this thing called Christianity. That's really, really new. Perhaps it's a decade old or a couple of decades. It's really new when Paul's writing this. And so you got some of the people in Jerusalem that actively work to see Jesus crucified. They're still alive. The people that have been trying to silence Christianity are still alive. In fact, one of the people that was trying to silence Christianity is the person writing this letter. Paul did all he could to push Christianity back to the pages of history to where everyone would forget about it. But it kept moving forward. And so you've got all these people that have been trying to quash out Christianity. They're still alive and they're still trying their hardest to kill Christianity out. And so what's happening, like in Jerusalem, there's this famine going on. And this famine's affecting specifically these people that are under Roman occupation, being the Jews, God's chosen people. But then in and of that, you've got this movement of Christendom is moving through Jerusalem, is moving through God's people, is moving through the Israelites, the Jewish people, and God's touching and God's changing lives and transforming people, and people are coming to experience Jesus. And what's happening at the same time, you've got all the teachers of the law and the Pharisees and the Sadducees that were trying to shut Jesus down. They're saying to these people when they become Christians, if you're that, you're out. You can't be here. They can't kick them out of their community, but what they can, and what they start doing is they start kicking them out of the synagogue. And this is devastating to them, because this is where specifically, and this, like you would have read at times in the Gospels, where Jesus turns up and they're doing trading and everything in the synagogue, and he gets angry and drives them out. A whole lot of their business, whether rightly or wrongly, would get conducted in the synagogue, specifically through times like this. This is places where they'd go and meet, they'd connect, they'd commune together, they'd develop relationships together, they would trade, so they'd come and trade something for food, or trade this for food, or they'd do business and find jobs and that sort of thing with connection with one another in the synagogue. And so all these Christians now were pushed out of the synagogue and said, you cannot be here, which immediately shut them down from being able to trade, shut them down from being able to get jobs and provide for their families and provide for themselves. And so now you've got all these Christians, not just other people, but all these Christians as well, dying of starvation because they are shut out by their own people group. And then at the same time, there's this whole debate going on about who's a Christian and who's not a Christian, who can be and who can't be. And the big dilemma that specifically the Jewish Christians are having, because Christianity came out of Judaism, and they're saying this: those Gentiles, which were the people from Corinth, they're Gentiles, which basically means a whole lot of things, but one of the things it means they're not Jewish. These Gentiles cannot be Christians. And so they're in this debate. Can these people be Christians? I don't think they can. They're like, unless they're circumcised, unless they stop eating this, unless they start doing this. And there's this big dilemma going on. Can these people actively be Christians? And then Paul turns up on the scene and he says to these guys, you know what? I think you should give. And he's saying it to all the churches around. I think you should give towards Jerusalem, specifically to these people that don't think you're Christian yet. That are still trying to work out whether you could be Christian. They're still trying to work out if God is actively working in your life. And specifically, he gets to Corinth, this tight-fisted city that loves their money. They're exceedingly wealthy by the standards of the time. And he says, I want you to give. I want you to give what you have to these Christians that are debating whether you're even part of God's people. Can you imagine what that gift would have done? It would have caused people to thank God. But what it would have done on top of that, it would have been a revealing of the Jesus that was working in their hearts. Our faith, our Christianity, our love is only ever demonstrated by our giving. If we don't give, there's no love. All it is talk. If we don't give, there's nothing. That's why God gave. That's why Paul is telling them, I want you to give. I want you to give generously. I want you to give towards the harvest that you're believing for. I want you to give so that the famine doesn't exist here anymore. I want you to give so much that these people's lives are transformed. I want you to give so much that all these other people in Jerusalem that aren't yet Christians hear of the story, of the testimony of your gift of generosity. They're so counter-cultural that people come to discover faith, that come to discover Jesus. I want you to give in a way that believes the harvest is going to transform people's active lives. Can you imagine what happened in the life of the Jerusalem Christians when these Gentiles that they didn't believe were Christians, that were never supposed to give, that was that's word I've just left me, culturally unacceptable or not normal to give. Can you imagine what happened when they gave? And then I reflect back on here and what we're wanting to do with what we're doing here, what IJM is doing, what Missions Australia is doing. Imagine what that gift says to people. When we give towards IJM, and when other Christians all gather together and actively give towards international justice mission, seeing people set free from slavery, seeing people set free from bondage. Can you imagine what that gift says when people are actively able to set them free and say, hey, you know what, we're a Christian organization and Christians have been giving to you and Christians have been believing in you. It starts to ignite something in them. There's a God that loves me. There's a God that's thinking of me. There's people that are actively believing in their faith and behind their faith and actively pursuing their faith and working out their faith. I think what it starts doing is it starts changing souls and lives and people. And then we get to Mission Australia. It's another Christian organisation. I wonder what it starts doing in the and we're going to hear from some stories from people from both those organisations. But I wonder what happens in their lives as well when people are set free from drug abuse, looked after, connected for, cared for, or like Mission Australia is all about seeing domestic violence, drug abuse, and homelessness come to an end. What happens when people are stuck in this lifestyle of being abused by their partner, abused by their spouse, and stuck in this lifestyle of domestic abuse when they're able to be rescued from that? And they're like, you know what, Christians have been giving to you. Christians have been giving to see you set free. I think it starts changing something in their hearts. Like these Christian community actively want to do something in our lives. Actively want to do something in our lives, in our hearts. And so the question that I have for us is the gift that we're wanting to give or we're thinking or we're contemplating giving, does that represent the harvest that we're wanting to believe for across the globe, here in this country, as well as here in this community? One of the things that I dream about is this, and I'm not saying this is what we're working towards doing in the next 12 months, but this is the things that I start dreaming about. Imagine if we, as a church, could outwork with such generosity. All these houses around us, we buy. And we have to ask everyone to leave. But then we set it up as emergency accommodation. So the people that are stuck in domestic violence, that find themselves homeless for a second, they've got somewhere to go because the church actively loves them and wants to be ready to support them, wants to be ready to connect with them, wants to be ready to embrace them. Imagine what it would look like. We've got marriages falling apart community-wide around us. If we could pay a marriage counselor's wage, all they did was meet with couples in the community to counsel them, to look after them, to connect with them, to care with them, to see their marriages restored. Imagine what that starts saying to the community. Hey, we actively love you. We want to serve you. We're here for you. We want to give towards you. Imagine when you got drug addicts and alcoholics and gamblers and on all the rest that have been just a leech on their families for the last who knows how long. And their families have been bled dry by the habits and whether it's their spouse and kids or whether it's mum and dad and brothers and sisters, but their lives are being equally destroyed. And then they decide, I want to get well, but now I've got to go to rehab, and rehab costs money. And so again, they become a leech on their family. What would it be that if we as a church could raise and be so generous that we've always got money that we can send XYZ addicts to recovery every year? I believe that if we could be a church that actively started giving towards the harvest that we're believing and giving like we're believing in that harvest, and we do this year in, year out, and we just got this lifestyle of I want to give and I want to see a harvest that is over and above anything that I can imagine, because I want to see Jesus touch lives and Jesus transform people. I wonder what would happen to people's lives in here, in this town, in where we currently are. And this is what I think and I believe and I know would happen. People's lives would be transformed by the gospel, by the good news of Jesus Christ. And I think we'd see a community begin to be transformed. So this is my encouragement as we move forward into Kingdom Builders. I want you to be going home and I want you to pray. I'm not asking you to give this morning, but I want you to go home and I want you to pray, God, how are you asking me to give? We've got 3 ways that we're asking you to give. I honestly believe in, obviously that's why I'm here. I believe in the work that Epicentre is doing here in Echuca, Moama. I believe in it. And I want to see it continue to move forward. I want to see it continue to grow. I want to see us impact more people. I want to see us touch more people. And I want to give a seed that demonstrates the harvest that I'm expecting. And same thing with IJM. I want to give a seed that demonstrates the harvest that I'm expecting across the globe. With Missions Australia, I want to give a seed that demonstrates the harvest that I'm expecting. So can I encourage you guys as a church? Next week, this is what we're doing. We're talking about us, what we're doing here, why we're doing things here. We're talking about our mission. We're talking about our vision, how we're actively attempting and trying to reach people and connect with people. And I believe that I've got a really good message that I feel God's placed in my heart for that. But this is what I want you to do through the week. God, how much are you asking me to give? And does that reflect the harvest that I see in my heart? Does that reflect the harvest that I see in my heart? What the reason specifically for here, what we've set up is we know that like giving a massive lump sum, it can be really difficult when you're not prepared for it. So just like Paul encouraged the Corinthian church, he said, why don't you just put something aside consistently until I come back? And that's what we're doing with Kingdom Builders. When we're asking to give towards us, one of the options is this, that you consistently put aside a certain amount towards us every week, so at the end of 12 months, it is a sizable amount that reflects the harvest that we're believing God's bringing. How about you stand? How about you just lift your hands? Everybody, please. God, I thank you that you've called us to be co-laborers with you. I thank you that you called us to be your ambassadors, to continue your mission here on earth, Father, of reaching people, of seeing lives transformed, of seeing lives change, Jesus. God, I thank you that is a challenge, for Jesus, that is a challenge that stretches us, Father. It stretches us financially. It stretches us emotionally. It stretches our time, Father. But I thank you that the blessing that comes with that, Jesus, is that you give something back to us, but at the same time, you're injecting something into people, and that is life. So God, I pray that as we look at giving, Jesus, as we look at giving over these next few weeks, Father, we don't look at it as far as I'm just giving money to something, but rather look at it in that I'm giving money towards seeing people's lives changed and lives set free, Father. And I pray that as we come together over these next 3 weeks and we give towards us, what we're doing here, then we give towards IJM, International Justice Mission, we're seeing slaves set free, and we give towards Mission Australia, seeing homelessness and specifically domestic violence completely eradicated, Father. I pray that we can all come together and give a sizable offering, Jesus, that reflects the harvest that we're expecting you to bring in every single one of those areas. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. So if you want to know more about some of the things that we're giving to and you haven't got it, there are up the back these things called Kingdom Builders. And it's just got a bit of information and so forth about the different ideas behind it. It's got the websites of everything. You can jump on and have a look. My encouragement is to do that. Jump on, have a look, prayerfully consider, how am I going to partner with us as a church to continue to propel God's mission forward into the future. Look forward to seeing you next week. Love you, church.